Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast. I'm David Higgins. I'm so glad you get to be part of this conversation today. And today we're going to spend some time with Staci Reidinger, who is a passionate advocate for those who cannot fight for themselves. She's former military and has brought that sense of duty and purpose into the nonprofit world. And this is really going to be a fun conversation. I think you're going to really enjoy it today. She is a fighter for the homeless and the president of the board of Home Aid San Diego. She is the director of marketing communications at the Navy Marine Corps Proud Foundation and committee member of Public Relations Society of America. Today, she is here to shake up your thinking and about digital marketing, how to launch your voice into the communities that you love. Staci Reidinger, who is a co-founder of San Diego Business and Nonprofit Crisis Support Network. What sparked the concern which launched this network?
So, I had just had a little a daughter in June of 2019, and I remember when things first started to lock down during COVID in March of 2020. At the time, I'd been approached about helping with a cause conference here in San Diego, which is usually a pretty big event, and we really tried to bring together nonprofit leadership and those that are part of that industry together to do learning and networking. So we knew that wasn't going to happen. And so Parker Pike and Eric Flynn, my co-founders for the San Diego Business and Nonprofit Crisis Support Network, we said, what can we do now? And so what we really wanted to do was provide a resource to small businesses and nonprofits who were absolutely struggling, whether it was because they didn't know what to do, they were shuttering their doors, they didn't know how to kind of keep keep their business intact until they could reopen, or whether it was the nonprofits who were actually feeling more of a burden or more of a need to support their clients and new clients, yet they weren't getting additional funding. So we really wanted to find the people out there. There are lots of businesses that are like, I want to help. We're doing well. We weren't impacted by COVID. And so we collected all of those ideas and put together a website as a resource. We were getting content shared with us from all different locations, whether it be government, non-governmental, places to find relief funds. We found pro bono consultants and companies that were willing to help these small businesses and nonprofits with mentoring and business coaching and all those areas. So that's kind of where the catalyst was, and it just pushed us towards wanting to do what we could. We were very fortunate to have the time available to put this together.
A lot of our listeners and viewers connected to us through the book Demystifying Fundraising Funnels, which was released in January. And in there, I talk about the importance of having a value ladder for a nonprofit. And for those of you that are listening or watching, go look at what they're doing there, because they have a very established value ladder. And I was like, this is well done. They know what they're there for. They know where they're bringing their value to the community and how to communicate that to the community. And it's a great example of what we're talking about in that book. So you're painting a really great picture of the why. How does a nonprofit drill down on their why?
Hmm. Well, I think one of the key pieces when you're trying to figure out your why is that it needs to be centered on the people that you are trying to help in whatever way that you're trying to help them, and ensuring that the why is surrounded by authentic stories that share those experiences. Because it's one thing to write a mission and to have some goals listed down and say, hey, these are the things we're doing and what we want to do, and please come and support us through donations, sponsorships. But the why comes out whenever you have those actual men, women, and children and families that you're trying to support. You get to hear the journey that they're on, the challenges they have, and your why should be helping them to alleviate that suffering and those issues. So keeping that story piece there is very important. It can't just be written in a very cold, kind of not disconnected way.
I know for me, I'm a musician. I love color. I love the broad strokes. My wife is brilliant. She is very introverted, and she's very detail focused. And losing that, you're talking about the why and being able to find out the why. A lot of times, the more introverted we are, the harder it is to really put a megaphone to that why. And as much as we feel it on the inside, how do we get that why out there so that others can know the why for our nonprofit?
Yeah, so there's so many tools out there, and depending on your budget and staff and time that you have for it, we are definitely, I'd say within the last, gosh, 15, 14 years since we've had this connection where we can directly talk to our potential or current donors and sponsors and volunteers and supporters directly through digital marketing through different online platforms. I'd say that. It's really important for you to be able to seek what those different platforms are out there and maybe get some advice on how to use them, and to make sure that your why is permeating out there in the right way. There are tons of different platforms that you can use. I'd say a multi-platform approach is appropriate, but also understanding every platform isn't used in the same way. And that also, secondly, clearly understanding who you're trying to reach and that every message isn't the same. Everyone's not going to receive that message the same way. So tailoring it to those different target groups you're trying to reach and making sure that your message gets out to them in the way that they prefer to hear it, see it, and what resonates most for them.
How can a nonprofit use a webinar to really help connect to the community and even fundraise?
Oh gosh, there's so much. So understanding your cause. So I'm going to use Homemade San Diego. The nonprofit that I'm on the board of is the chair. One thing for us, think about Homemade San Diego, one of 19 chapters around the country. At the national level, at Homemade America, which is based out of like Irvine, California, Orange County area. They do an annual big symposium type of webinar piece. It's online, and they bring in voices from all over the country, not just from San Diego proper, to educate on experimental ways to bring in, whether it be using ADUs, tiny houses, innovations with affordable housing, how to break through the barriers of all the red tape involved with building new shelters. So they kind of crowdsource that. So what they're doing is they're creating a thought leadership opportunity. So instead of it being just, I'm going to do a webinar and talk about, maybe highlighting a project that we've done, they've turned it into where they're now someone who is looked at as as a go-to. And I think that helps to also lift the credibility of that nonprofit by showing that they're bringing that value as awareness, advocacy, learning to the environment. And you know what? Another piece of it is when you do those things, you often are able to not only steward loyal your loyal sponsors and supporters, you're actually able to find new groups that are interested. It's a great way to build awareness about your brand.
I spend a lot of time with small nonprofits, mid-sized nonprofits, ones with staffs under 25. That's full-time staff under 25. In them, with the problem that often is we get so focused on our mission, connecting with our mission, trying to take care of the people we're there to serve, and the reason why we were there. And a lot of times we start um, forgetting how to really connect verbally outside of our mission statement. So you said the
Mhm.
word thought leader. And how does a nonprofit move to become a thought leader? And how do they change that psychological perspective from, okay, I'm taking care of these people, taking care of these people, to being a thought leader? Because in my opinion, almost all nonprofits are groundbreaking in the resources they're trying to bring to the table, and they could become a thought leader, but there's a psychological shift that has to happen.
Yeah, and I do believe that some nonprofits and or small or businesses, but let's just stick to nonprofits. I do think some nonprofits like their cause lends them to be more in that thought leader space than others. Like if you're a nonprofit that has a very niche piece, let's say even Interfaith Community Services, which is a very large nonprofit here in San Diego that offers shelters, they offer education, wraparound services, all of that for those experiencing or at risk of homelessness. They're great at what they do, but also because of what they do, they are one of many nonprofits that are offering homeless service provider support, like Alpha Project, like Father Joe's Village. So, not that those groups couldn't be thought leaders, because I actually think they have. Interfaith Community Services has an excellent podcast that they do, and they are doing a great job exposing the voices of the range of people who are experiencing homelessness to demystify all of these negative perceptions people have about them. I think that you can be a thought leader. It's just understanding and creating kind of a plan on what you're trying to achieve. So, if you, regardless of what your nonprofit is, if you really want to step into that space, I think working with someone who understands communications and how to really determine what their key goals are, and then how to get there, what platforms to use. Sometimes thought leadership should be done in more of an in-person type of environment, which I know a lot of us had to shift to online. So, group setting, online environment, and sometimes it's a thought piece that gets put into publications, and your voice gets elevated because you're showing value there. Sometimes it's shifting from thinking everything's fun on Facebook to actually being shifting over and being more in the professional kind of headspace of the industry on LinkedIn. Those are kind of little steps to take if you're wanting to get into that arena.
You said something that was really great. You said about the importance of knowing your niche. I would think that the more you know your niche as a nonprofit, the more you're able to articulate to the public in a way that is actually more pointed. Um, it, I know smaller nonprofits try to help everyone more than larger nonprofits. Larger nonprofits are really better at finding their niche. They've had to get to that space. But when you're small, a lot of times somebody comes and you say, "Can you help me here?" Yes, we can help. Yes, we can help. We end up being depleted, and we're talking about our why earlier, but knowing your why is very similar to figuring out your niche also as a nonprofit, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I wanted to add on to that comment you just made about I've seen nonprofits who they shapeshift based on a grant opportunity, or something that's coming their way. And I do understand the revenue flow differences between a for-profit and a nonprofit, and I get that. But that can also harm you down the road, because if you're trying to do too much, it can kind of it can take you away from really the focus area that you want to, and it can also confuse those that you're trying to get as supporters to your cause. I think it's good as well. I wanted to bring up, as a nonprofit, having kind of not just your board of directors standing behind the things that you're doing and being there as advocates and spokespersons and really trying to drive your mission, but also any of those other supporters out there. We really talk about making sure our staff know how to talk to the public and our board members. I think it's important for anyone in your spectrum that touches your organization to truly understand your mission, being able to talk about it in a positive way to others. And how are you going to do that? You need to have things set up for them, whether that's being something multimedia that they can turn to, whether it's a stock presentation that they can take in whenever they're going to go in and pitch and say, "Hey, we want to support the mission of this organization with X amount of money." Having those resources ready and available, having maybe a short B-roll video, or not just a B-roll, but actually a produced video that talks about the mission and what your organization can do. But not just remembering, it's not just for your internal stakeholders. It's also important to have those available if needed for your external, who may need to go and move towards the funding. But yeah, it's just it's interesting. I haven't really been behind the wheel on nonprofits for more than about 5 years. Most of my time was either the military piece, or then my time at the UPS store, which was a huge experience with UPS and the for-profit side. But there's much to do, and but it can get very distracting. There's a lot of stuff out there to choose from.
I know. I mean, I'm throwing myself back 30 years. I was leading a nonprofit that we were guilty of exactly what you said. We'd have another group of funding come a certain direction, and to keep the doors open, we'd pursue it and say, "Okay, it's only a little bit different." And then it led us to something else a little bit. And before long, we weren't actually doing what we love to do. We're doing what
Yes.
we needed to do to keep the doors open. it was fracturing, right? It was
Mhm.
mentally frustrating. I remember in desperation sitting with a group, and I was 23 years old, and I was responsible. It was a small nonprofit, two paid staff, four volunteer staff, and our goal was we had just dissolved the middle school gang, and that middle school gang had just came out of that, and we're able to do that without too many repercussions. And the police and the schools were working with us, and found ourselves in a very contentious space. And because of that, if we stepped away, there was a vacuum. So we kept on moving into um, more dangerous financial territory to be able to accomplish the mission. And I remember the desperation, young, inexperienced, and trying to do something that I thought was very important. And I put this pressure on my volunteers, and one of them turned to me and said, "Dave, this is not why we got started to do this, right?
Right.
That mission isn't where we're at." And it became this arresting of our focus and having to really find our way back to where we're at. How do we maintain focus and maintain alignment with our communication effort and organizational values? There might be others listening today saying, "David, I'm right where you were at." How would you counsel us, or from your advice, point us back in the direction we need to go?
Yeah. So I hope those nonprofits that are listening are creating and developing like a strategy that has kind of that's aligned with who they are, who they serve, and that they have that in your. It's developed. The staff developed that alongside the board, and that not only gets reviewed and voted on and put into place at the beginning of the year, but it needs to be brushed off and looked at throughout the year, whether that be at the beginning, every board meeting, or quarterly. But I think you'll have to go back to kind of that. I think it's sometimes like opening the Bible and going back to the basics. These are the things that we said we were going to do. Are we still doing them? Are we something pulling us away from it? But having kind of that process in place so that you can never forget who you're serving, why you serve them, who helps your organization. Now, if that discussion has to be had about, hey, are we evolving? Because that needs to happen too. If you don't evolve and change with the things that need to change, then you may get left behind and you may find out that you're not as relevant as you used to be. But you're not going to know that if you don't remember the core basic things. Another piece I would state: ensure your marketing communications plan's purpose is to support your nonprofit's goals. The marketing communication plan with key talking points, it should be shared, like I mentioned earlier, across your staff, board of directors. There should be consistency and amplification of the same messages. If people don't know really what they're supporting or why they're advocating for what you do, then it can get a little bit murky. And then that's maybe where some of those, well, I can give you an example. There's a nonprofit that I help and pro bono provide support for. They do a lot of help for pregnant women who are in dire straits, who are really looking for support. And then they also help those women once they get in the doors with housing, with wraparound services, especially if they're coming out of abuse, domestic violence. Well, during COVID, they actually found out that because so many people were in need of just basic food staples, that they could become a resource for San Diego Food Bank. Well, I visited this same place recently this year, and they had so much food that was there stuffed in their spaces. And we had a conversation, and they're like, I feel that we're overwhelmed now. I don't know if we should still be doing this. And I'm thinking to myself, why were you doing it in the first place? There were so many other resources at hand for people that this group, out of goodwill and understanding that they were helping a population in need, they were like, okay, we'll do it. We'll take it out. And of course, they were probably getting some grant funding to do so. But again, it was distracting. It took away hours of their time. It wasn't on the mission. It took away from doing their casework. So yeah, you need to have that thing, and you need to have your plan. It needs to align with your mission. And if you don't have core values, I think you should have them. Really thinking through, like in the Marine Corps, we have core values. Those values really tie true to the way that we operate and the things that we do. You might not think they're important, But I really do think those core values help your employees, your board, your partners feel more purposeful in your mission. And when you start to see things going off the rails, you're like, I'm not quite sure if this is a good fit for us. You need to go back to those standard plans that you have established.
That was good. That was really good. If you're sitting in a room with a dozen nonprofit directors and you needed to help them understand digital marketing, which is something that you specialize in, I know, and how to transition into it as a nonprofit. Digital marketing is a new frontier for nonprofits, though businesses have been playing around with it for, since about 2015. Uh, for us, it's groundbreaking. Sometimes scary. What steps should they take?
Yeah. Well, from someone who started in public relations communication uh, pre-internet, I'm aging myself a little bit, and I've seen it all happen and move towards it. Being someone that was helping to launch Facebook and Twitter for the United States military, for our larger commands in Afghanistan, I can tell you that digital marketing has absolutely evolved into so many different ways, and in a good way. I think it's really allowed even that very small niche, small business or nonprofit that is just kicking off, gives them a voice, gives them an opportunity to get their brand out there. Now, you're in my classroom. These are the things that I'd like to share with you that really think are important. Number one, if you're trying to find more clients, donors, volunteers, sponsors, grantors, well, they're all online. So how are you going to stand out? Okay, not only are they online, all of your competitors, everyone else that's trying for that space are there. I think you should start with the basics. You should be developing a digital marketing audit of some similar nonprofits, especially if you're brand new. Go look and see what others are doing. Look at the ones that you think are hitting it out of the park. And then you should develop a tailored digital marketing plan with measurable goals and objectives. Next, depending on the size of your staff and your budget and your volunteers, you're going to have to prioritize. You can't do it all at once. You're going to have to decide, what do you want to accomplish, and develop a strategy to reach it. And make sure that this is realistic, that these are realistic goals that you're putting down. Let's use Homemade San Diego for an example. We had a fundraising goal for $60,000 for our walk event in 2021. In order for us to reach that, there was no way that we were going to get all of our registrants and sponsors involved without using digital marketing in this day and age, especially because we were still kind of dealing with COVID a bit and there were differences in going out to like actual in-person events. So what we did was we created a logo for our event. We actually came up with a strategy for us to be able to promote that event. And we went out to lots of different locations that actually offer free places for you to post your events and things like that. We created key content that we would use on our social media. We connected with our previous sponsors who were willing to share our posts on social. We did. We made a video of our every year we do an event. Every year we do an event. That was our third year doing it. We created an actual master video that we could then share and tease so that people could see the work that we've done. We worked with about 3 different online platforms to offer registration. So there were a lot of components and pieces that are in there, and there's tons of different ways to do it. But that was kind of one example of how we used digital marketing to stand out. The last 2 points I want to make is that sometimes digital marketing can seem overwhelming. I worked at a very large company, and I remember there were times where we, even at our level with a very large budget, and we were doing things which we call in social called pay to play, which is essentially where you're spending a lot of money to target and get your ads and your promotions pushed into the right place. We were still wondering, are the numbers really telling us, and are we really getting more customers coming into our stores? Well, I can tell you that one of the things that helped us make sure that we knew we were on track was that we had specific, measurable goals. And we were using those digital tools out there that you can find online. A lot of these different social platforms, they have tools that you can use, or you can find a multi-platform tool that will actually aggregate all of the different tools you're using to show you overall your reach and things like that. So, other things, if you depend on heavy web traffic, consider a engine optimization audit. Or if you're just starting off and you don't even know what search engine optimization means, go look it up and determine if you have the capacity and experience to do that, or if you need to lean on someone to provide you with support on how to do it. You want, when someone goes, types in your nonprofit name, Meals on Wheels, you want your nonprofit to pop up first, and you want people to see that, and you want it to provide accurate information about who you are, and instantly get traffic to your site if that's what you're looking for. And then if you're trying to steward your current supporters, consider tailored email marketing. Email marketing, that right now, I'd say maybe even surpassing just randomly posting things on social. Looking at emails that can reach out directly to the people that you already have opted in, that are willing to receive emails from you to learn and to continue to know about your organization. So those are just a few. I have a longer list, but let's just start there.
That is a pretty good start. Thank you. I like the
Hmm.
classroom. I feel like I was
Hmm.
writing down stuff as
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
going. Um, I have two thoughts that you're talking about. I want to just touch them real quick. In demystifying fundraising funnels, we create several digital marketing blueprints through there, which social media is a good wedge of what that is. Uh, I know there's 103 social media platforms out there that have teeth that are actually, but there's seven monsters. You got your Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and forgetting
YouTube?
one. Hmm?
Did you throw YouTube in there?
YouTube. Sorry.
Okay.
YouTube. Yes. So I have a hard time thinking YouTube is social media, but yes, it absolutely is. What do you see working successfully for the organizations you're helping and consulting with?
It just depends on, again, what their mission is, because again, you have to know who you're trying to reach. So I'll just say up front, TikTok is not being used by any of the groups that I'm currently like working with, but some of the groups that I have in the past,
Mhm.
absolutely, I could see that they're being used. Even like the U.S. military, I think that we've had some fun, whimsical times where we've been able to kind of play on some ideas within TikTok. But TikTok was just like, yeah, it was evolved from previous, like Vine and others that were created. But the top ones that we're seeing, that we're mostly paying attention to, are going to be your Facebook and Instagram, which if you do it correctly, you can get a lot of traction out of those two. LinkedIn on the professional side, that's helping to develop those leaders and thought concepts. And then Twitter. Twitter is just an excellent way, especially if you're trying to tie in about trends and things that are happening, that are taking place out there. Um, and I'd say YouTube is a growing piece, because years ago, when it was hard for us to create video, it wasn't as easy for us to dive into that. But now video is becoming easier and more available for all of us to use, whether we do it on our smartphones, or whether we're finding some other ways to get it done. But those are kind of the key ones that I'm seeing lead the way.
My
Yeah.
team here at the podcast, we did a survey of several hundred people 2 weeks ago because we've been getting a lot of pressure about Facebook. I mean, it's
Hmm.
getting so expensive to advertise. There's so many advertisers on there. So is it a flooded market? Is it a red ocean, basically? Uh, the concept was how many people actually are on Facebook versus the plethora of other social media outlets. What's the strength of LinkedIn? So we took the big seven. We didn't worry about the other 92 that are part of the lists. And we graphed it and we just took the several hundred people through the interview. And at the end of it, we found out 98% of them were still on Facebook almost every day. And I was
Hmm.
like, really, with all of the negativity and all the news press and all the frustration that's out there, still 98% of those that we surveyed were still on Facebook. The fastest growing platform was YouTube. We found 99% of them were on YouTube at least every third day. And I was shocked because I keep hearing that YouTube is the fastest growing of all the platforms out there right now. You think of TikTok, which is within the sector is growing very fast, but it is not really able to really help carry a mission statement more than just connect people socially. Even though there are those that have been doing that successfully. I was really surprised though on only 42% were really engaged on Instagram. And that might have been the generations we were interviewing. It was a very broad batch. We had teenagers, 20, 30s, 40s. By the time we got into the 30s, we started finding Instagram much less, have
Hmm.
much less of a following. But across all of them, even the teenagers say they weren't on Facebook. The teenagers we surveyed all had Facebook platforms that they checked in on a daily basis. So I thought that was an interesting statistic.
Yeah, you just
Mhm.
made me think of something, and it's making me think about whenever we look at these different platforms. Again, you can't forget what your mission is, and who you're. You always have to remember your audience. Who are you trying to reach, and who are you trying to communicate with, and what message are you trying to give them? I almost think you have to think about when you're serving a meal, and knowing when you're serving a meal, the environment of which you're serving it. Understanding if you're serving a five-course gourmet meal, are you going to serve it at the park on a picnic plate, or on a picnic blanket, and in your swimsuit, and everybody's playing around, or are you going to serve it in a dining room with candles and the right ambience and things like that? So I often think about maybe just what you said, that you think about if we were to look at TikTok as an environment and the things that surround it. It's just understanding, like when people use Snapchat, for instance, really understanding what's going on Snapchat. What are the main reason why people are going there to Snapchat, right? Brands want to be there because there's a lot of people there, but the brands have to be careful because of the way that they can be perceived by investors, by other people. So thinking through it as at what your mission is, and then when you go to that platform, think about the overall environment and how people see that and what people do on it, right? What do you go on Insta for? I'm looking through photos, family, friends. Maybe it's lighthearted things. Going onto Facebook, maybe there's a range of different things. Maybe sometimes I really like what my friends post about the news and serious stuff, but I like to see my friends and family. Whereas if you go to LinkedIn, that's not, I'm not on LinkedIn looking at my mom and my dad. I'm on LinkedIn because I want to learn and I want to grow. And there's things happening in the world. There's news, there's opportunities that are out there that I want to find. And so that each one, again, it's almost like serving dinner. It's like, where am I going to serve my dinner today? Do I want to serve it? Is it a fun thing? Do I want to go play in that space? If you want to do it well, but think through it because it can backfire. Make sure that you're serving it and serving in that environment, and that the people you care about serving it to are there, and you're serving it in a way that they want to get
Wow, that's a pretty good playbook that you just laid out there. I like that.
it.
Um, I almost want to rewind the entire thing, listen to you say it all the way through again. That was really good. I'm gonna. I was just handed this by Elizabeth just before we started this show. She said, and I was gonna mention it before we actually started a conversation to kind of get your head there, and I didn't get a chance to, so don't get too nervous. She said, "Can you ask her for a drop the mic type question? You're in a room full of nonprofit leaders ready to take on the world, and I hand you the mic. What do you say?"
Thank you. I think that what you all are doing is amazing and it's needed. And that in order for the fabric of our society to be successful, we have to have men and women dedicated towards helping others. We cannot rely and expect our government or even business to do so. And you all are in that arena, and it's tough, and it's different, and it's gritty sometimes, but stick it out and believe that what you're doing is going to make this world a better place. Because just like we hear in that story about the starfish, the guy walking on the beach, and the other guy says, "Why are you wasting your time throwing the starfish back in? You're never going to help them all." And he picks one up, throws it in, and says, "I helped that one." That's all you have to remember when you get up each day. Can you help one person? Can you help one group? Can you help one issue move it in the right direction? So, yeah, that's what I would share.
I feel inspired. Thank you. It has been an incredible conversation. If a listener wants to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do it?
Yeah, I'd say find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place there. And then from there, I would maybe send me a direct message and we can have a conversation. Or you can also find me at my personal email, which is staci.reidinger@gmail.com. But I usually am up on all these platforms. As you know, that's my life. So you can find me there on LinkedIn.
You know, we end every show doing a shout out to a nonprofit that's doing a really good job. And so I'm going to go ahead and go first and give you time to consider which one. You've worked with so many. Which one would you like to put a highlight on? And, when you've been on the website of International Rescue Committee, uh, if there were Marvel superheroes that lived among us, I'm pretty sure some of them are hiding out with the International Rescue Committee because they are, in my opinion, the very best of us. They do an incredible job. Uh, and there, if you go to the website, if you can, David, who are these people? Go to help.rescue.org, help.rescue.org. Charity Navigator gives them a charity score of 86.92, earning them a 3-star rating. And donors can, and this is from their words, give with confidence to this charity. So it's a 3-star out of 4. They're dealing with such a broad scope of need, and they are a charity you can look at with confidence, according to the Charity Navigator. But more than anything, they're people that help people that absolutely cannot. I know a lot of nonprofits say, look, we help with those in our community that can't help themselves. But these are people that literally are locked away and cannot get out, and they go in and rescue them. And an incredible organization worth looking into. If you want to feel encouraged, like they're amazing people in this world,
Mhm.
go look at them, saying, who do, as a nonprofit person, who can I say, you know what, they're nonprofit too. Gosh, I'm around really cool people. That would be the International Rescue Committee. So that's my shout out today. So Staci, it's your turn. Who would you like to give a shout out to?
Well, first, I'd like to say, David, thank you for giving them a shout out because they've been doing some amazing work in a place that's close to my heart in Afghanistan. I'm an Afghan advocate, and I really, really, truly believe they're one of the key components, and especially this time period since the U.S. Has not been involved as much with the evacuation. So, thank you for giving them a shout out. Now, the one I want to shout out is one that has impacted my life in a different way. Back in 2017, we had Hurricane Harvey that hit really hard down in the Texas, Louisiana area where I have family. I'm from Louisiana. And there's a group called Team Rubicon. Now, Team Rubicon, they are a veteran led and a veteran organized nonprofit. They have groups of people that are in teams across the US as well as globally that are doing disaster response and relief efforts. So this could think about if there are the Kentucky just had the tornadoes that hit there, they have people responding there. Hurricanes that hit in Texas, Florida, earthquakes in Haiti, you name it, they were out there. Outstanding organization, thousands of volunteer members make up who they are and make drive their mission. They do take people, so if you want to be a volunteer, they are looking. You can go to their site. It's Team TEAM Rubicon Rubicon USA.org. And their motto is get shit done. And can tell you what, we do get it done. I volunteered with them after Harvey, gutting homes, thousands and thousands of homes that were flooded out, and just good people. You'll walk away tired, dirty, and you'll go, I did something today and it really helps someone. So check them out.
That's awesome. That sounds like a fantastic nonprofit. You did say something and it triggered something I'd read in my research before this conversation. You really are an advocate for the Afghani people, aren't you?
Yes. Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit of where things are at now? Because they're no longer in the news, because that 15 minutes of segment is over. And a lot of Americans are choosing to forget a very difficult period of time, more for the Afghan people than for us, but for us as well. Some of us lost family, friends over there. And some of us have a huge question why we're there. And so we just kind of want to block out that chapter of our history is done. We've moved on. But you are really still trying to fight a fight that's no longer in the news. Can you give us just a little bit of the what's going on, where things are at right now, and some of the needs that are facing you as you champion them?
Sure. So, as some of you may know, we had thousands and thousands of Afghans with individuals and families that were brought here to the United States or moved to third countries, moved to countries outside of Afghanistan in refugee camps. So, at this present moment, there has been, after the new year, there has been an opening of the airport there in Kabul, which is the capital city of Afghanistan, where nonprofits are mostly doing their part to try to help people to leave. The U.S. State Department and some of many other countries are still also trying to get their U.S. citizens that did not leave out of Afghanistan, and then they're also helping people to do ground transportation, maybe to Pakistan or Iran or to another bordering country. But the situation on the ground is dire. It's horrible. What happened when the Taliban took over? They created a vacuum, which a lot of most other countries do not recognize the Taliban as a formal government because of the fact that they were actually the same group that we were all fighting as a 42 plus country from NATO. So whenever that happened, money stopped moving into the government. So the government wasn't able to provide basic needs, at least to those that they were providing it to beforehand. So there's winter there. I mean, it's very cold. Think of like Boulder, Colorado. It's about a mile high up in Kabul, Afghanistan. So people are not getting enough food to eat. They don't have enough shelter. So a lot of the things that we were trying to do there got unfolded very quickly. There are people in hiding who are at risk of being caught, captured, and potentially killed. There are human rights that have been stepped back when it comes, especially to women and young girls. Young girls, there were still a lot of fixed marriages and women being in their tradition culture, women or young girls are sold to those that they would be wedded to. That's happening even at younger ages, and lots of other just very dire, horrible things. So it is not a time to forget about Afghanistan and that country. They have lived 20 plus years. There are people that have never not known war in their lives, and they are still stuck there trying to get help. So if you want to help in some way, number one, help the ones that have made it to the United States. Please figure out ways. There's lots of nonprofits that are out there. Jewish Family Services here in San Diego. There's several others that are all over the country that are doing things to just help them assimilate into our country. A lot of them are going to need English training if they weren't speaking our language. Their children are going to need to get into schools, need to find friends. They left with the shirts on their back. They need help. They're here. Okay, so let's make sure they're taken care of. And then the ones that are forward, if you know someone like me or someone else that is trying to advocate for them, and we know we can get a charter flight in to pick them up and take them out, then help fund that in some way so that we can get them to a spot where they can be more stable and safe.
Staci, thank you so much for being our guest. This has been an incredible conversation.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it, David. I think you and I should do a coffee break sometime just to catch up on more of these, more of our experiences and the things that we're passionate about.
Absolutely. And to all of you that are listening, thank you so much for what you do for your communities. Your nonprofits are needed, your leadership is needed, and we are so grateful you're doing what you're doing. Reach out to us on the not just in the comments sections, but shoot us an email if you have questions you'd like us to ask in future interviews. If you would like to connect with us, questions you want to ask us directly, please do so. We live so that you can do your mission and do it well. So have a great week. Until we speak again here in just a few days, thank you.